The little girl's eyes widened as she stared at the elegant woman across the table. "My daddy says we don't need charity," she whispered, her small voice carrying across the hushed restaurant. The CEO's perfectly composed expression cracked, revealing something raw and unexpected beneath. No one at that table could have predicted how this chance encounter would change all their lives forever. If you're moved by stories of unexpected kindness and second chances, hit that like button and subscribe to see more life-changing moments that remind us of our shared humanity. Michael Reeves clutched his daughter Emma's hand a little tighter as they entered Bellini's, the kind of upscale restaurant he would have never considered in his previous life. The maitre d' glanced at Michael's worn blazer and Emma's slightly too small dress before reluctantly leading them to their table. Michael felt the familiar sting of judgment but straightened his shoulders. This dinner was important, a rare celebration of Emma's 8th birthday and his first full year of sole custody. "Remember your manners, sweetheart," he whispered as they settled into their seats. Emma nodded solemnly, her dark curls bouncing. She was growing up too fast, forced to mature by circumstances no child should face. "Can I order spaghetti?" Emma asked, her eyes bright with excitement as she studied the menu. "Of course, princess. It's your special day." Michael smiled, though his stomach nodded as he scanned the prices. He'd been saving for months for this dinner, picking up extra shifts at the warehouse and cutting corners wherever possible. The promotion he'd been promised kept getting delayed, but he refused to let Emma down. Not again. Not after everything. As they waited for their server, Michael noticed a commotion at the front of the restaurant. A woman in an impeccable charcoal suit was being escorted to a private table, flanked by assistants who seemed to hang on her every word. Even from a distance, her presence commanded attention, confident, powerful, untouchable. "Daddy, who's that lady?" Emma asked, following his gaze. "I'm not sure, sweetheart," Michael replied, though he recognized her from local business magazines. Alexandra Winters, CEO of Winters Innovation, one of the largest employers in the city. The kind of success story people whispered about, orphaned at 12, scholarship to Harvard, built her company from nothing. The kind of success that seemed to exist in a different universe from his own. Their server arrived, a young man named Thomas who seemed genuinely kind despite the restaurant's pretentious atmosphere. As Michael ordered the most affordable items he could find, a small commotion erupted near the entrance. "Sir, you can't just," the maitre d's voice carried across the restaurant. Michael turned to see an elderly man in a tattered coat being blocked from entering. The man's weathered face was creased with distress as he clutched a small paper bag. "Please, I just need to return something," the old man pleaded, his voice trembling. Something in the man's desperate tone struck Michael. Before he could think better of it, he was on his feet. "He's with us," Michael called out, surprising himself as much as everyone else. "He's joining our table." The maitre d' looked skeptical, but Michael walked over and gently guided the old man toward their table. Emma watched with wide, curious eyes as her father pulled out a chair for the stranger. "Thank you, son," the man said, his voice rough with emotion. "Name's Walter. I just needed to return this." He placed the paper bag on the table. "Found it outside. Looked important." Michael nodded, not entirely sure what he'd gotten himself into but unwilling to turn back now. "I'm Michael, and this is my daughter Emma. It's her birthday." Walter's weathered face broke into a smile. "A birthday? Well now, that's something special." He turned to Emma. "How old are you today, little miss?" "8, Emma replied shyly. 8. A very important age. The age of possibilities, Walter said with surprising eloquence. As they talked, Michael noticed several patrons watching their table with disapproval. The server Thomas returned, looking uncertain. "Will your guest be dining with you as well, sir?" he asked carefully. Before Michael could respond, Emma spoke up. "It's my birthday. Can my new friend stay?" Thomas smiled at her. Of course. I'll bring another menu. Walter tried to protest. I don't want to impose. You're not imposing, Michael said firmly, though his mind raced with calculations about how he would afford another meal. Please, join us. As they settled into an unlikely dinner together, Michael learned that Walter had been an engineer before a series of misfortunes. His wife's illness, medical bills, the recession, had left him homeless. He spoke with dignity and intelligence that belied his circumstances, and Emma was captivated by his stories of building bridges and designing buildings that still stood in the city. The world's full of structures most people never notice, Walter explained to Emma. But each one matters. Each one holds something up. From across the restaurant, Alexandra Winters observed the unusual trio. She'd noticed the commotion and had been watching with increasing interest. Something about the single father's gesture had caught her attention, the instinctive kindness, the lack of hesitation despite his own obvious financial constraints. It was rare in her world of calculated decisions and strategic relationships. When Thomas returned to take their orders, Michael hesitated only briefly before telling Walter to order whatever he wanted. The old man chose a simple soup and bread, seeming to understand Michael's unspoken financial concerns. As they waited for their food, Walter reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded paper crane. For the birthday girl, he said, placing it in Emma's palm. My wife taught me how to make these. She said they bring good luck. Emma's face lit up. It's beautiful. Can you teach me? Walter smiled and began folding a napkin, showing Emma the precise creases and folds. Michael watched them, a lump forming in his throat. It had been so long since he'd seen his daughter this animated with anyone besides himself. Their food arrived, and Michael couldn't help but notice that Thomas had brought an extra basket of bread and a side of vegetables that they hadn't ordered. The young server gave him a subtle wink. As they ate, Walter shared more of his story. He'd been trying to get back on his feet, applying for jobs despite his age, staying at the shelter downtown. The hardest part isn't being without things, Walter confided quietly while Emma was distracted by her spaghetti. It's being invisible. People look right through you. Michael nodded, understanding more than Walter might have guessed. After his ex-wife had abandoned them, leaving behind a mountain of debt and a devastated 4-year-old, he'd felt that same invisibility, the way people's eyes slid past a struggling single father, the assumptions, the closed doors. Not everyone looks away, Michael said, glancing at Emma. Some people still see. Their conversation was interrupted when Alexandra Winters suddenly appeared at their table. Up close, she was younger than Michael had expected, perhaps in her late 30s, with intelligent eyes that seemed to assess everything at once. Excuse me, she said, her voice confident but not unkind. I couldn't help noticing the paper bag you brought in. She addressed Walter directly, treating him with the same respect she might offer a business associate. May I ask what's in it? Walter looked surprised but reached for the bag. Found it outside on the sidewalk. Looked important, some kind of portfolio with designs in it. Was hoping to find who it belonged to. Alexandra's composed expression faltered for a moment. May I? She asked, reaching for the bag. Walter handed it to her, and she carefully removed a leather portfolio. As she opened it, her breath caught audibly. These are the original concept sketches for our new sustainable housing project, she said, her voice tight with emotion. My assistant must have dropped them when we arrived. They're irreplaceable, the only copies with the architect's original notes. She looked at Walter with new eyes. You found these and came all this way to return them? Most people would have thrown them away or ignored them. Walter shrugged. Doesn't take much to do the right thing. Alexandra stood silently for a moment, seeming to make a decision. Then she pulled up a chair and sat down at their table, shocking everyone, including her hovering assistants. I'd like to join you, if that's all right, she said. And dinner is on me tonight. Emma looked at her father uncertainly. Michael hesitated, his pride warring with practicality. "That's very generous, but," he began. Emma interrupted, her voice small but clear. "My daddy says we don't need charity." The table fell silent. Michael felt his face flush with embarrassment, though he couldn't deny the truth in his daughter's words. It was something he'd said many times as they'd struggled through the past few years, refusing handouts while working himself to exhaustion. Alexandra's perfectly composed expression cracked, revealing something raw and unexpected beneath. For a moment, she looked almost vulnerable. "It's not charity," she said quietly. "It's gratitude. And perhaps a bit of selfishness on my part. I'd like to hear more about all of you." There was something in her tone, a genuine interest, perhaps even loneliness, that made Michael nod slowly. "Then we'd be honored to have you join us." As the unlikely group shared a meal, barriers began to fall. Alexandra spoke of growing up in foster care after losing her parents, of the teacher who had recognized her potential and pushed her to apply for scholarships, of building her company with the driving belief that innovation should serve community needs. The housing project in these sketches, she explained, is designed to create affordable, sustainable homes for families and individuals transitioning out of homelessness. But we've been facing resistance from investors who don't see the value. Walter studied the sketches with professional interest. "The thermal design is innovative, but you could improve the structural efficiency here and here," he said, pointing to specific elements. "Would reduce costs by at least 15%. Alexandra looked at him with surprise. "You understand architectural engineering?" 40 years in the field before life took a different turn, Walter replied simply. As the conversation continued, Michael found himself sharing his own story, his struggle to keep his job while being a full-time parent, the promotion that kept being promised but never materialized, his dreams of returning to school to finish his business degree. "Where do you work?" Alexandra asked. "Meridian Logistics," Michael replied. "I'm a shift supervisor at the West Side warehouse." Alexandra's eyebrows rose slightly. "Meridian is one of our suppliers." She studied him thoughtfully. "What would you change there, if you could?" The question caught Michael off guard, but he'd thought about this often. "The inventory system is outdated. We lose hours every day to inefficiencies that could be solved with better integration between departments. I've proposed solutions, but no one listens to a shift supervisor," Alexandra finished for him. Michael nodded, surprised by her understanding. As the evening progressed, Emma grew comfortable enough to show Alexandra how to fold paper cranes, while Walter sketched improvements to the housing designs on a napkin. The unlikely dinner party drew curious glances from other patrons, but for once, Michael didn't feel the weight of judgment. There was something genuine happening at their table, a connection that transcended their different circumstances. When the meal ended, Alexandra insisted on having her driver take Walter to a hotel for the night instead of returning to the shelter. "Just until we can discuss some ideas I have," she said when he protested. "Consider it a consulting arrangement." To Michael, she handed a business card. "I'd like you to come to my office on Monday. I think there might be a position at Winters that would benefit from your perspective." Michael stared at the card. "I don't want special treatment." "It's not special treatment to recognize talent and experience," Alexandra replied firmly. "It's good business." As they prepared to leave, Emma tugged on Alexandra's sleeve. "Are you going to help Walter too?" Alexandra knelt down to Emma's level. "Your father and Walter have already helped me more than you know. Sometimes the people who seem to need help are actually the ones offering the most valuable gifts, like honesty, integrity, and a new perspective." She looked up at Michael. "Your daughter is extraordinary." "She is," Michael agreed, his throat tight with emotion. "She's the reason I keep going." Outside the restaurant, as they waited for their respective rides, Alexandra turned to the three of them. "You know, I was supposed to have dinner with potential investors tonight. They canceled at the last minute. Something more important came up, apparently." She smiled slightly. I'm glad they did. This was far more valuable. Walter nodded thoughtfully. Funny how life works. I just wanted to return some papers, and instead, we all found something we needed, Alexandra finished. As Michael tucked Emma into bed that night, she clutched the paper crane Walter had made her. Daddy, is Walter going to be okay now? She asked sleepily. I think so, sweetheart, Michael replied, smoothing her hair. And I think we will be too. Because of the CEO lady? Michael considered this. Partly. But also because we remembered something important tonight. What's that? Emma murmured, her eyes drifting closed. That everyone has value. Everyone has something to offer. Sometimes we just need someone to see it. 3 months later, Michael sat in his new office at Winters Innovation, reviewing the implementation plan for the inventory system he'd designed. Through the glass wall, he could see Walter in the adjacent engineering department, his experience now valued as he consulted on the sustainable housing project that was moving forward with enthusiastic investor support. Alexandra knocked on his door frame. The board approved your education assistance program, she said. You can start classes next semester. Michael smiled. Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me, Alexandra replied. That dinner changed my perspective as much as it changed your circumstances. I'd forgotten what it was like to connect with people as people, not as business opportunities or charity cases. She glanced at the framed photo on his desk, Emma at her school play, beaming with newfound confidence. How is she? Thriving, Michael said. She started a paper crane club at school. They fold cranes and attach notes of encouragement to give to people at the shelter. Alexandra nodded, her usually composed expression softening. She asked me a question that night that I keep thinking about. She asked if I was going to help Walter too. But the truth is, you all helped me. I was building housing for people I never actually spoke to. I was running a company without understanding the real challenges workers face. I was successful but disconnected. Michael understood. In the months since that dinner, he'd watched Alexandra transform her company's approach, instituting policies that recognized the dignity and potential of every person, from the cleaning staff to the executive team. The changes had not only improved morale but had actually increased productivity and innovation. Sometimes the most important question isn't what can I get, Michael said, but what can I see that others are missing. Alexandra smiled. Exactly. And speaking of seeing things differently, don't forget the community dinner tonight. Emma promised to teach my board members how to fold paper cranes. As she left, Michael turned back to his work, marveling at how a single evening, a birthday dinner with an unexpected guest and a CEO's simple question, had changed everything. Not because of charity or luck, but because for one moment, people from different worlds had truly seen each other. And sometimes, being truly seen is all the chance anyone needs. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more content that celebrates the power of human connection. Remember that the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples that change lives forever. Share your own stories of unexpected connections in the comments below.